And therefore, if you have this type of a situation, you look in here for the stricture, and if that's there, you know you might have a heart bronchial lung area. All of them will be tied in together.
Just a quick word of caution in holding points here. I will go into this in much greater detail next week, but John mentioned holding points here in the ascending colon. It's very, very dangerous to do point holding on the abdomen on an individual that doesn't have full nerve supply. You can really seriously injure the person. And so there are situations where you have to, temper your zealousness with a little bit of caution. There are reflex things that we'll go into next week on, other ways to hold points on say, the ascending colon without direct pressure in the abdomen. Person with good nerve supply, not a problem to work in there gently, but on somebody without good nerve supply, you can really do some damage. Okay, one of the concepts that we're going to look at here in iridology quite a lot is reflex activity. And without jumping ahead too much, one of the main reflexes is just a 0-degree reflex, everything along the same line in the eye like that. John was saying before when he had this dent up here that it would reflex up to the, to the heart and the lungs. So the thing is, everything in the body is going to have some reflex to a particular part of the large or small intestine. I mean, the large and small intestine encircle the whole iris. So just on a 0-degree reflex alone, you're going to have reflex activity to the whole body. And this underscores one of the basic principles of health, that you can't really have a healthy body when your colon's all screwed up. I mean, if your colon's a mass of toxins and parasites and scar tissue and whatnot, it's going to be very difficult for you to have health in the rest of the body. The body works as a whole, and the iris reflects this very, very clearly. One of the areas that will require a lot of effort for many of you is the cecum. Do y'all know what the cecum is? Okay, the cecum, if you think about the overall structure of your intestines, you're gonna have your small intestines where your stomach will feed into your small intestines, and they'll kind of move their way around here in the middle, and then in the over here on the right side, you're basically going to have a one-way valve that's called the ileocecal valve. Is this familiar to most of you? The ileocecal valve. This is a one-way valve. Its location is going to be approximately, if you find this kind of little bumpy part here on your pelvis here, the little kind of jabby part there, right halfway between about there and your belly button. That's roughly the location of your ileocecal valve. It will be a one-way valve between your small intestine and your large intestine. The last portion of your small intestine is the ileum, and then the first portion of your large intestine is your cecum. That's why it's called the ileocecal valve. Now, your ileocecal valve will be located, roughly over in this area. Your cecum in the iris of the eye, it's going to be located, of course, over on the right side, roughly up around, say, 6:45, 7 o'clock in that ballpark. It can vary a little bit, but it'll be over in that area. Now, anatomically, your cecum is going to actually be down below the valve. You're actually going to have part of the cecum area that's going to be inferior to the valve. And then as your colon moves around, you'll have your ascending colon coming up the right side, which again will be between about 7 and 11 in the right eye in the chart. Then you'll have your transverse colon coming across the top and so forth. The thing to realize about your cecum is it's a blind alley. It's a cesspit in most people. It'll be extremely toxic in most of you if you haven't had good colonic therapy. This is one of the things that we recommend very, very highly in the program. I noticed there was some flyers up from some different people around in the area that do colonic therapy. I don't know if they're any good or not, but I guess we can probably. Who knows the? Okay, so we can recommend these individuals here. It's very important that you get good colonic therapy, particularly if the cecum is very toxic. You can work all you want with enemas and all the rest. You're not going to get the cecum. It's going to take a lot. Put it this way. It's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of enema bags to eventually get water all the way around there to get the cecum done. I mean, it can be done, but it generally takes a lot of work. Typically speaking, with enemas and all, what you're really just going to be cleaning out is the sigmoid colon down here on the left, and some portion of your descending colon on the left. If you're lucky, and if you do, several enemas in succession, you may be able to get a little bit of the water up into the transverse colon. But in most cases, you're only going to be clearing this part of your digestive tract. You're not going to be getting over the cecum. Now, how many of you have had a good cecum dump? How many of you have had a colonic where you've actually got the cecum to dump? Okay, quite a few of you. What does it feel like when it actually dumps?
Very hot.
It's very, very hot.
I mean, turn on the hot water.
It's absolutely, it's a very unmistakable sensation when you have it. It's completely different than the sensation you were, like when you first start off on the colonic and you're getting rid of all the junk from down in this area. It definitely feels like a relief to get that stuff out. But it does not have that same hot sensation. And then finally, maybe half hour, 45 minutes into the colonic, and for some people this won't even happen until their third or fourth or fifth colonic, you'll finally get around to the cecum, and when you dump that stuff out, it's a very unmistakable sensation of just this hot, it burns on the way out, and many people will get a lot of very intense, immediate reactions as the cecum's dumping, a lot of nausea, dizziness, like you're going to pass out, a lot of very, very intense reactions. This is extremely important. With the cecum, you may well be dealing with toxic material that's been sitting in there for years and years and years. What I've noticed when I've had a good colonic and really got the cecum to dump, if I have to go back and have another colonic, say a week later or a relatively short time later, there may well be some stuff in the cecum again, but when it dumps, it's definitely not as hot. I mean, you may get a little bit of warmth out of it, but it's no comparison to that stuff, that toxic material that's been in the cecum for many, many years. Some people will need to get quite a good long series of colonics in order to really get the cecum clear. Some of you maybe need to go in 2-3 times a week for several months to really get the colon good and clear there. So that's something to consider here.
What is the function of the cecum?
I think on the one hand you have your appendix is a little sac that sticks off the cecum, and the appendix has a number of functions. I don't claim to understand it fully, but I know that one thing the appendix has a lot to do with is your lymphatic system and detoxifying the body. So I would suspect that one of the purposes of the cecum is to actually try to detoxify some of the material that's in there. But there's probably some other reasons as well. I don't know if John has anything on that.
You have to start somewhere with the large intestine, and so you start with that cecum area. Now, one thing that happens with that cecum area, down in the lower right-hand side, is over the years, for people especially who have constipation problems, they should have problems. The problem here is to get that cecum opened up, and it's going to take sometimes a series of good colonic therapy. Now, oftentimes you find pigmentation right down here at 6 o'clock in the right eye, and then spreading on down toward the kidneys, adrenals, and leg area, showing that there's weakness in the legs, as long as this area in the cecum area is going to get clogged up, shall we say. Now, with this constipation, I call these little things down in here dog biscuits. And it's like a bunch of dog biscuits, and that's how it looks when they are dislodged and they come out. And you've got to work on that. And so when you get the water, watch me, when you get the water down into the cecum, you can slosh that stuff around, you can hear it sloshing around when you're getting a good colonic. Now watch the direction of my hands. I was taught this by Dr. Robert Wood, who's the father of colon therapy, originally from Tasmania. He moved to the States to the Gary, Indiana area. And he had a clinic there until he was about 93 when he passed on. But watch me. I'm pushing in this way. So there's one axis going in and out this direction. Pushing in, sloshing that water around. And then I get my hand in there and I slosh it up and down this way. I get in here and I move it up and down this way. You see this? And so that gets the water sloshing another direction. And then I get in here and I work it the third way. Now if you're a colon therapist, you'll do that. You'll have to do it so there's no pain. And then gradually all of those hardened incrustations will be removed from this particular area and will flow out through the tube. You'll watch these big chunks of hardened fecal matter, is what they are, that will slowly come out through the tube, and you wonder, well, that was in me, better out than in. And especially when you get a good cecum dump, all that sludge will come running out of there. Sometimes we find mineral tablets that have never dissolved. Certain types of mineral supplementations that are non-colloidal that settle in here, and we've had teacups full of tablets, calcium tablets and things like that the body has never been able to dissolve, come right out of that cecum. Now, when that cecum is impacted with fecal matter that has dried up and has never been dislodged, that will hold the anterior lip of the ileocecal valve open, so all of the toxins from the colon then are able to move back up through the ileocecal valve and literally cause a toxic condition in the small intestine, which destroys then the friendly flora, which we call the acidophilus. And when that ileocecal valve is open, one of the symptoms is bloating. And a lot of you are troubled now with bloating in the small intestine area. Now, a very good indication of an ileocecal valve that has not been closed will be on the fasciolata, which we'll cover at a long time after body electronics. There's a muscle structure that goes right up the side of the leg called the fasciolata on both sides. This has a direct reflex, bit by bit, to the entire colon, okay? Now the fasciolata, if you stand at attention, if you'll all stand up for just one moment where you are, and put your right hand hanging just at attention, down on your side, and you rub down on your right leg with your right hand. The third finger should be right close to the reflex to the ileocecal valve. And if you rub that, and you have an ileocecal valve problem, you'll have a serious pain there. How many of you have pain on the ileocecal valve? May I see a show of hands? About half of you, okay? Now that ileocecal valve, you'll have to rub around there about the size of a 50-cent piece, and you'll find one little spot there that might be quite tender. The tenderness is an indication that you'll have a little problem with that ileocecal valve. Now just remember that if you have a seat now, just remember if that cecum is not well cleaned out of all those glorified dog biscuits, then that anterior, when you have gone to naturopathic school and your teacher knew nothing about acidophilus and how the acidophilus will actually aid in the digestion and synthesizing of different elements for the body. I want to stress, if the acidophilus is not present in the intestine, you will not get the conversion of your beta-carotene from all of your vegetables and so on into vitamin A, and you'll end up with vitamin A deficiencies.
I would like to, with permission, I would like to share with you, particularly those who are feeling pain in the ileocecal valve, and I would like to enlarge, if I may. Not only do you get funny feelings from the ileocecal valve, it also leads to headaches and can lead to pain almost any place in the body, because we're dealing with toxins, as John has just mentioned, and I'd like to repeat that back up when the ileocecal valve is open, back up into the small intestine and get reabsorbed as food. And you're reabsorbing toxins into your body. So there is a very simple, easy method of balancing, and I hope that's not a dirty word.
Dirty word.
There's a very simple method which I would like to share with you, and if you, any of those, particularly those who have pain right now, would like to do this, it only takes about a minute, and we can make sure that the ileocecal valve is functioning. Now, I'll be glad to show you this, and all you have to do, you might like to stand up and do this with me, because it's a very easy, fast method of bringing your ileocecal valve back into a balanced area that will then work. Now, there are three... there are 3 points that you have to rub. The first one is in the area of the iliocecal vein. Everybody sit down and I'll demonstrate. By merely placing your hands flat in the area of the iliocecal valve and giving it a very good, firm rub, okay, followed by rubbing up in the areas here in the hollow area of your shoulder as it meets the chest, thorax, and then rubbing back here, right below, you can see here, right on the bottom of what's it called in here? Right on the bottom of the mastoid, and giving that a good rub. And then your iliocecal valve will go back into balance. And this can be easily proven by reflexology. What am I talking about? By kinesiology, merely by testing a person prior and touching their iliocecal valve, and their arm will fall off, and then after you do this, you'll find the arm is as strong as the right. Thank you.
And that might last all of 5 minutes. Because if you've got a problem in that iliocecal valve area, even though you balance it up, that anterior lip will still be held open by that toxic condition of impacted fecal matter which will be in that cecum area. Brooke.
Is that because you're dealing with balancing the energies rather than the physical body still pulling the lip down?
The balancing will only be a temporary thing to alleviate the pain, because the condition, you haven't dealt with the cause. You're only balancing temporarily.
You've got to hit the physical.
You have to get to the physical body and straighten it out, because balancing will not hold. Okay? And you find that many techniques of balancing will not hold, because that you're not correcting the cause. The cause is getting colon therapy, colonic therapy, so to speak, and getting that cecum cleaned out properly by a good, trained colonic therapist. Now we have a little leprechaun coming in here from the left.
Just a quick case history that seems...
Speak loud, please.
A quick case history seems relevant at this point. The diagram that was just on the board there, with the dent in the autonomic nerve root in the cecum area, running out with the reflex down into the leg area. There was a little, beautiful little, she was so cute, this little girl that came into a clinic I was working in one day, and she's 6 years old. And she had basically this, but just a little bit further around. Just here. But almost exactly the same as that. And she didn't really have any pigmentation or any radiocellari yet. She was kind of too young. hadn't gotten to that stage of degeneration yet. But what she did have was constipation, and she only went once a week. Now, on further inquiry, she did have, I can't remember whether it was like a pain or a weakness in her leg, particularly the leg on the right-hand side, which is the area we're talking about. And the autonomic nerve root and all the rest of the iris, it was wonderful iris, very good constitution, everything was just wonderful, but just this constipation and this sort of abnormality down through the legs. I'm a little hazy on exactly what it was. And so I held the point just down in here, and it was kind of like a knot in the abdomen. And I held that with my left hand, and with the right hand I held an iliocecal reflex down on the foot. And just held them, and it took about an hour and a quarter for a memory. And, as a 6 years old, teaching a 6-year-old that this is on the physical body is quite interesting. So we ended up playing games, and the mum just sort of looked at me with her mouth open going, "You're doing well." And so we made up this quick game, and I gave the points names and explained how the points had to go to the brain, and we had to sort of play the whole way along. And so then she didn't like my name, so she renamed the 2 points in the brain, and there were 3 princesses. And I asked her how big the crystal was, and I explained to her. She kind of understood. She closed her eyes, and she went, "Oh, it's about this big." And then about halfway through, I said, "How big is it?" She said, "Oh, it's about this big." It was half, And she decided the princesses had to get married. And when I finished marrying the princesses, the points stopped, which I thought was very profound for a 6-year-old. So the princesses were married, everyone was happy, and the points had finished. And just as an afterthought, I bothered to check the iris. You know, she left the room and I ran after her and realized I hadn't checked the iris. And I'd never seen it before, but the dent had come completely out.
The dent had disappeared.
The dent had gone. You wouldn't be able to tell it was ever there. And I was amazed. And she went to the toilet about 6 times a day for the first 3 days. And it's like during the football, she said, "I'm boiling inside." She kind of smiled, "I'm boiling inside." Before she got bored again. But her bowel movements have been fine ever since. So about 6 times a day for the first 3 days, and after that she was about 2 or 3 times a day. Just right.
Okay, Anita, if we could have you back on the other, we'll take this down. Bob, did you have something, sir?
I had a single dumping path report on. I just want to relate that I had a dumping from the Seacom after having my points called. And it's quite interesting. You don't go very far from the toilet. You get about 10 seconds notice and it burns like hell. And it happens to me about 14, 15 times in one afternoon.
Okay, Anita had one thing she wanted to add, is oftentimes with the bloating in here and the ileocecal valve being held open, you also will be bothered with a lot of bad breath along with the bloating. Okay, so that's just done.
You want
Further. If I could have those doors closed, please. It's too dark or too light in here right now. Could I have that other door closed in the back, please? You grab hold of it. Okay, now if that could be brought in right here, Anita, could we pull that down right here behind you there, Gretel? I think that's going to help. Okay. Now, please take note, again, of the autonomic nerve breathing. We're just going to go through this for a moment, all the way around. You see where this is pushed out right here? You take note of these little areas, and we'll get into that in greater detail. But please notice, which eye is this going to be, a left eye or a right eye?
Right eye.
If it's a right eye, this is the inner canthus here, so this is definitely a right eye. You see this indentation right here in the autonomic nerve region at 6 o'clock. And it's right to this area. This whole area is going to have problems. Now, one of the areas that you look for as you're going around the eye, and I want to point this out from the beginning so you can keep this in your computer, you look for anything which is a deviation from the norm. Okay? You look for anything which is a deviation from the norm. Where's Paul? Okay, I couldn't see you there, Paul. I missed you. Okay, thank you, sir. Now, please note as you move around even the zone 6, which will be your lymphatic system, there's only about one thing that is going to be standing out very firmly at about 6:15. Now, what do you have? May I have the lights on for one moment, please? Look at your iris, the lights, please. There you go. What do you have at just after 6:15? The groin area. So if you see something, for example, now lights off, please. Okay. If you're in the groin area, you see a congestion in the lymphatics. Chances are pretty good you're going to have lymphatic congestion in the groin with little swollen lymphatics in the groin area. Sometimes those can be great big hard knobs of lymphatic congestion. Pardon me? Can we have the lights on just a little? We'll see if that detracts at all. Just a little. Down, 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 down. Down more. Can you see that all right from the back there, Paul? Yep. Okay. So you take a look at any deviation from the norm, anything that stands out, that is not going to be like the rest of the eye, is where you're going to find a major condition that will have to be dealt with. Harry?
Type over there.
Hey. Where's everybody? Mark, Peter, would you just kindly urge everybody inward? We're missing about 10 people. Kurt, was Anita far behind you?
Right here.
And I'd like Nicola to present her case.
Last night I woke up at about 3 o'clock and I was in blind terror and my heart started asphyxiating and I felt like I couldn't breathe and I became aware that there was this really bright white misty light coming in through the window.
Were you awake?
I was fully awake, and so was Dawn, because I called out to Dawn, and she said that she saw the light. Now, there were no balcony lights down our block that night, and I went into a little bit of confusion because I had been praying to get rid of this fear out of my body around having been abducted, so I was really confused as to whether...
Stop there for a moment. Let's stop for a moment. You have been abducted before, do you not?
Twice.
Twice. Do you hear this? Okay, now how many do not remember what she said about being abducted? Okay, now I want you to go back over that again, if you would, Nicola, so that there is a perfect memory after this event. Bring everybody up to date as to what has happened prior to yesterday.
Okay. When I was 8, I woke up in the middle of the night, around about 4, screaming because I had a really bad earache.
Speak a little louder, please.
And my father came into the room, and we later on found a mark on my thigh where something had happened there, obviously. And all I had memory of then was a white misty light and a feeling of suction, like feeling of being sucked into the light. And after that, I had no memory. And about 3 or 4 years ago, when memory started coming back to me, and the rest of the memory was that I was taken on board. And I don't know if it was a ship or not, but I saw lots of implements, and I was on a table being operated on and having lots of things happen to various parts of my body and being experimented and being probed and prodded and all sorts of yucky stuff. And when Des and John were talking about the fetuses and tubes and everything, I saw all that, and I saw quite a lot of other things and organs that are being suspended in fluid and people being experimented on. And like that's what I remembered, and it happened a second time. And
How old were you at
11.
That'll be 3 years later? No.
Yeah, 3 years later.
3 years later.
Yeah. The same thing happened the second time at the exact same place, because we used to go to the same holiday flat every year for holidays out in the country. And
How old were you?
the first time I was 8, the second time I was 11. And I relayed in my story before that I haven't been able to carry any pregnancies. Like, I've lost 3. 2 of them were spontaneously miscarried, or I don't have memory of them actually being taken, but that's what I remember so far. And the third one started to miscarry, and I ended up having to go to hospital and have the last part of an abortion performed. And my memory is that there's been a lot of tampering in that area of my body and a lot of programming. So last night I relived all, I thought I was reliving it all, because I started feeling like I was being sucked out through the wall, and I getting really scared, and all the symptoms were coming back about fear and terror and everything, and I started becoming aware that I had a drug in my body, a drug, and something, not a fluid drug, but something in my body that was really drugging me, and a lot of programming started coming out, so I called for lots of help, and just kept chanting, because I really didn't know whether it was happening in present time or whether I was reliving an experience. But logically, the light, there were no lights on last night, and it was bright, light daylight, like a misty, white, really bright light that you'd have to squint, and I could literally feel the suction, and I didn't want to get up and look because I knew that the last time I got up and looked at what that light was, I got sucked right into it. And then the curly birds started screaming, and there was lots and lots of screaming going on, and
The what word?
curly birds.
Curlew.
Curlew, sorry, yeah. Birds were screaming. And that's when I really felt like something was actually happening in present time, because it was just really weird. It was 4 o'clock when I looked at my clock, but I had been awake for at least half an hour, 3/4 of an hour. Yeah. So.
Thank you very much. Now, several people told me they couldn't sleep last night and were up around 3:30 or 4 o'clock. I wanted to get to the bottom of this. Now, John, would you, oftentimes they say in the mouth of 2 or more witnesses are all things established. I'd like to have Dawn tell her side of the story here because she was there.
Well, I woke up first just before the birds started, and they were screaming, and when I looked out to the lower side of the bedroom, it was all light out there, and then Nicola started to cry, and so I got up to sort of pacify her and calm her down, but she was really, really, really upset, and that went on, we were about an hour with all the bits and pieces. Settling down. Yes, I saw the light. It was all bright out there, but I didn't look out. It was all
How long
light.
were the lights there, to your estimation?
Probably about 10 minutes, I would say. They were there quite a while.
Okay, thank you. Des, now I understand you're involved in all this.
Yeah. No, not so innocently. The birds started to cry for me first because I've trained myself to listen to nature to find out what else is going on in life. And I saw the bright light, and I knew I've seen it many times before. And as it comes down, when she talks about a white misty light, that's precisely how it is. Now, I deliberately every night for block Bs, I'm sorry about for these people, that turn off the light outside. I trot down every night, turn off the light outside. And if you want to know why I do that, that's why I do it. I don't want to be fooled about lights. I apologise for those people who'd like to have some light on, but when I have a light, I know what light I'm looking at. I don't want to wake up half asleep and wonder if it's that light or this light. I want to know immediately what light I'm looking at as soon as I come awake. So it was good.
Okay. Gary.
They went to your room too.
What's this?
They went to his room as well.
First of all, I have never experienced any of this stuff, and I've mentioned that to a couple of people.
Myself?
I have never experienced any of this stuff, and I've mentioned that to a couple of people. I wonder if it happens to Kiwis. Christabel, where are you? 2 nights ago, remember I said to you I was looking up at Jupiter through the open window. I sleep with the open window there. And there was this mist around it, like a moon. And I said, I wonder what that is. I was talking to you saying, wonder what that is. And the following day I said, I remember from my meteorology that's ice at 30,000 feet, there's going to be a storm. The problem with that was it happened again the next night. And when you said the misty white, I recognised it. It's been around Jupiter and climbing 2 nights, and I'm in the next room, and that's what my experience has been. And I heard the screaming and woke up. I didn't see the light last night, but I have seen this light around Jupiter 2 nights in a row.
Now, question.
Yes.
Now, Jupiter, that little tiny, I think it's up in Leo right now.
I think it's been coming across the sky.
Is it Sagittarius? What's that?
It's Sagittarius.
It's a Sagittarius right now.
What is the planet that is rising in the east and setting in the west? It looks like, I thought it was Jupiter. Okay, so it's wrong planet.
Okay, but it would not have created that bright a light that would shine into the room. Is that correct? Okay, so even though it's up there, we may have a different situation here.
The light is really low, John. It comes down really low.
And
what direction?
it comes in at an angle, but like 45 minutes tomorrow.
Okay, now let's all stay within a framework of reality and certainty and make sure none of this is dreams but something very real, because it's easy to imagine this or imagine that or dream this or dream that, which we all dream. But Karen, you had something you wanted to share, I believe. Is this correct, or do you want to share it?
Yeah.
Okay, come up here, please.
I'm down in a tent, as everybody knows, and last week, I'm not really a person who gets afraid because I've been on my own for many years, so the dark doesn't really worry me. But last week, the birds screamed on and off all night. I got into this little tent, and I'm going all goosey all over, and I could hear, actually there's been 2 ships down there. There's been the massive one that I saw last week, and it really scared the life out of me. And it is just massive. It's stories upon stories high, and I had the same feeling that I was going to be taken. Steve helped me through that on the other day, because I could see myself being beamed up into it, and I knew I didn't want to go again. But there's smaller ships. Well, I knew that ship. I've been in that ship before. I was a technician in the ship. I was a geologist or something to do with outer space travel, and I was collecting pieces off another planet. So I might have been another type of person.
Another time, another place.
Yeah, and they took me in about, we were sort of investigators. You go out from your planetary ship and you go on to certain places to see what minerals are there, and you're like a forerunner, and you go out and you collect all this stuff and you take it back to your own planet for use. And they killed the others. The others they killed, but me they kept. And they implanted me, and I had brains obviously, and I was up at the top of the ship where all the dials and everything were, so I must have had a bit of knowledge to keep me. But I went into this absolute terror like you have with the light was around. I had my little tent door open, and the light was coming in, and I was praying to everybody. All the masters, suck it to them, don't let them get me. And it still didn't stop that gut creepy feeling, you know? And I could hear them walking around. They were walking around, because I specifically put stuff like a silly kid. I put twigs and things on the outside so that if anything came particularly near, I would hear it, even in my sleep, and it would wake me. And I could hear them walking around, and they were just standing there. And here in my naivety, I thought, you know, if I bury my head in the sand like an ostrich, they just won't see me, you see, and I'll be safe. And they could have just zoomed me out any time at all. But there's been a smaller ship. It's very small, and it's been over in the trees over there. And the night before last, Monday when I first came back, there was another ship over just beyond the tree line where the other tents are, just over in the corner. But I wasn't quite as afraid. And then I said, I've got to get out of this. My body was aching, all sorts of things. I couldn't sleep, and I thought I can't sit through class. So I asked, could I have a room? And it wasn't meant to be Sunday night. And then the one came available yesterday, and I
thought, no, I've got to face this. Here I am, I've got to stand up. And I spoke to Anita and I said, maybe it's something I've got to overcome in myself. And so I went back down. We rearranged my bed and everything yesterday, so it would be more comfortable and that wouldn't be waking me up. And I had a great sleep last night. I saw them there the night before, but I didn't see anything at all down my way last night. And the birds didn't go off. Those curlews and scream, they make a really screamy noise if anything comes around. But look, if I can tell you, somebody told me that you've got to ask the Elohim, the Grand Council, to take, you sever, with them, to sever all ties, all inlines, all outlines. You see the white light coming down through you, and get the masters to sever and to break, fix up any commitment you may have made so that they could take you. And I did that, and it took last night for it to really come in. Also, he said, people that are taken, you can carry over from one generation to another. If they've come and taken your mother or your grandmother, you still have that in your consciousness. So you could be reliving that. Like I mean for babies. I mean when they come and take you or your children. And also they leave a mark somewhere on your leg. Down here, up here, there's a mark.
I beg your pardon?
They leave a mark.
They left that mark on you.